In 1935, Italy invaded the African country of Ethiopia, then known as Abyssinia, in violation of the League of Nations Covenant, to which both countries belonged. The invasion sparked the Abyssinian Crisis, a global debate characterized by diplomatic failures on the part of France, Britain, and the League of Nations, and successes on behalf of Haile Selassie and Italy. The consequences included the Berlin-Rome Axis and the eventual dissolution of the League of Nations, which paved the way to World War II. The Abyssinian Crisis illustrates the consequences of ineffectual diplomacy and the challenges of collective security. The crisis originated from several factors. During the scramble for Africa in the 1880s, many European countries invaded, occupied, and annexed African territories. As part of this process, Italy colonized both Eritrea and Somalia in East Africa. It then set its sights on their neighbor, Ethiopia, a landlocked monarchy that dated back to the 2nd century BCE. The First Italo-Abyssinian War stemmed from an 1889 treaty that Italians took as establishing a protectorate over Ethiopia. The Ethiopian government rejected this interpretation, and in 1896 the Ethiopian army decisively defeated the Italians at the Battle of Adwa, one of the first military victories by an African power over a European power. 23 years later, the world witnessed the end of another war, the Great War. Disillusion ran high due to the war's widespread carnage and destruction, highlighting the inadequacy of international relations and revealing the desire for permanent peace. In response, the League of Nations was formed in 1919. Its covenant provided for disarmament, peaceful arbitration of disputes, and collective security. By 1934, the League had attracted over 50 nations, including Britain, France, Italy, Germany, and Ethiopia. South African statesman Jan Smuts called it one of the great miracles of history, and it successfully averted war between Greece and Bulgaria in 1925 and between Colombia and Peru in 1934. The Japanese invasion of Manchuria in 1931, however, tested the League's ability to maintain peace on a larger scale. Japan rejected the League's attempts at arbitration and withdrew from the League. The League's failure to impose sanctions damaged its credibility, and Japan's success in defying the League encouraged anti-League sentiment in Italy and Germany. Germany left the League in 1933, leaving Italy to deliver the most severe blow to the League with the Abyssinian Crisis. In 1934, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini began a campaign to conquer Ethiopia. His motives were fourfold. He sought to benefit Italy economically because Ethiopia was fertile, offered abundant natural resources, and would connect Eritrea with Somaliland. Conquering Ethiopia would also help Italy to recover from the worldwide depression of the 1930s. Furthermore, a military success in Ethiopia would avenge Italy's 1896 defeat and boost Mussolini's waning popularity. In December 1934, Italian and Ethiopian forces clashed at the Walwal Oasis on the border of Ethiopia and Italian Somaliland. Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie protested Italian aggression, while Italy demanded an apology from Ethiopia. For several months, Ethiopia requested that the League of Nations arbitrate the Walwal incident. Although Italy eventually yielded to the demands, it also began preparing for an invasion. Ethiopia's appeal to the League was the first of many, and the Walwal incident proved to be only a stepping stone to the ultimate crisis. The Walwal dispute was eventually settled in September of 1935, but the real issue of Italian aggression against Ethiopia and mobilization still loomed large. This issue created a quandary for two of the League's largest countries, Britain and France. They were hesitant to apply the League's principles to Italy, which might become angry and leave the League, undermining European security and encouraging Hitler. But if they did not act in accordance with the League's principles, they would fail to uphold the covenant and face significant public criticism for aiding a fascist state. During this period, Italian diplomacy successfully kept the affair out of the League's hands, while Italy continued mobilizing its forces. Newsweek magazine speculated that the affair would be settled by diplomatic dice throwers rather than legal arbitrators. In October 1935, Italy invaded Ethiopia, unleashing dive bombers, tanks, and machine guns against the emperor's primitive army. By a vote of 50-1, the League condemned the Italians, declared Italy the aggressor, and imposed economic sanctions. The sanctions, however, excluded both oil and steel. Moreover, several members refused to enforce them, turning the situation into a diplomatic blunder for the League. The disastrous Hoare-Laval Plan further highlighted the League's ineffectiveness. Without consulting Ethiopia, British Foreign Secretary Samuel Hoare and French Prime Minister Pierre Laval engineered a secret plan to cede much of Ethiopia to Italy. When the plan became public in December, it sparked international outrage as a sellout of Ethiopia. Many small nations could see themselves in Ethiopia's position and began to doubt the value of collective security. From January to March of 1936, Haile Selassie continued to protest to the League about the brutal methods of Italian warfare, including the use of mustard gas and the bombing of villages. One of the Ethiopian commanders lamented that his troops didn't know how to fight this terrible war that burned and killed. Still, the League failed to take decisive action. In May, Italy officially annexed Ethiopia into Italian East Africa. Over 200,000 Ethiopians died in the war, many of them civilians. In June, the League received one last chance to defend its credibility. Speaking in his native Amharic, Emperor Haile Selassie delivered an eloquent, heartfelt speech regarding the monstrosities of the war and the need for meaningful League action, and warning that it is a question of collective security, of the very existence of the League. His speech made him an anti-fascist icon and drew attention to the plight of Ethiopia. But the larger member states remained unwilling to take the necessary measures to uphold the covenants of the League, most noticeably war, and all sanctions short of war proved to be a failed diplomatic strategy.
If you don't have mechanisms to prevent war, to respond to aggression, the organization is ineffective. It simply is a lesson in history.
The League's inaction had dire consequences. Although the economic sanctions had been ineffective, they still angered Mussolini. He drew closer to Hitler, resulting in the 1936 Rome-Berlin Axis and the 1939 Pact of Steel between the two fascist countries. In their quest for global empires, Italy and Germany soon joined with Japan, creating the Axis alliance and initiating World War II, the deadliest military conflict in history. The Abyssinian Crisis also marked the death knell of the League itself. Had the League's members been willing to go to war to protect Ethiopia, this could have diffused Italy and Germany's territorial ambitions and avoided the ensuing epoch of international anarchy. Indeed, war was inevitable if the League wanted to take effective action. However, the League was unwilling to do so. As the historian George Scott pointed out, no measures against Italy which the League was willing to contemplate could possibly do anything to save Ethiopia. The crisis illustrated the League's inability to maintain international peace, resulting in a loss of credibility from which the League never recovered.
There were no provisions for effective military actions by the League of Nations, and so League of Nations did not have adequate means to prevent World War II.
Following World War II, the Allies created a new international organization, the United Nations. Unlike the League of Nations, the United Nations has repeatedly taken or supported military action to respond to aggression and resolve international conflict. Examples of such action include the Arab-Israeli War of 1948, the Korean War of 1950, and the Gulf War of 1991. These examples refute the arguments of commentators such as former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger and British historian A.J.P. Taylor, who used the Abyssinian Crisis to criticize collective security as ineffectual idealism. In fact, the Abyssinian Crisis demonstrates that collective security requires recourse to any and all measures, including war. That is a lesson that the United Nations has taken to heart. Culturally, the Abyssinian Crisis helped to mobilize popular feeling against fascism and undermine belief in white superiority. In contrast to Mussolini and the Italians, who were viewed as brutal and sadistic, the Ethiopians were seen as heroic, and Haile Selassie was named Time magazine's Person of the Year. In 1935, global relations fell into an abyss in the Abyssinian Crisis that would alter the character of international diplomacy. Mussolini's successful manipulation of the League of Nations sparked debate regarding the purpose and principle of collective security, and the League's ultimate failure to maintain such security led to both its demise and the most catastrophic war of the 20th century.